So good morning. Um, First of all, to welcome all the new members. Baruch Hashem, it's growing. Our community is broadening, and hopefully, with the taste of Chayes Rabbi Safsele Beis Medrash, then there'll be even more of a geschmack and even more Chayes than has been until now. And also, would like to mention Yashakeh for all those who answered the survey. All the feedback is being corroborated and taken into account, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver the best possible product to give a geschmack in the pnimis haTorah and learn in aliba denafshei. So let's get right into our inyan. We're now starting for the next 9 weeks. We're going to be learning the inyan of Meitzar HaGoron in the context of Yitzias Mitzrayim in Aved. This is Kamuvan, a uniquely Chabad Sugya. In other words, it's dealing with the struggle that Achasid Chabad has. The ultimate question: how do we apply what the Alter Rebbe's vision for Vashevesa Lavavecha should actually come about? How could we bring down from when we meret in inyan, from the theoretical to the practical, from the ideal to the real, bringing from the meichin to the mitzvah to the meiser? Now, this is kamuvan, a kasha which only begins lefi the mahalach of the Alter Rebbe of Chassidus Chabad, where everything has to be in eifin pnimi, and we're not mistapik with emunah, with inyonim of makif, siras nefesh, various other ways, mahalchim of chassidus. Elo, we want to bring the emunah b'pnimis, bring it into seichel, and from seichel we're going to bring it into mitzvah. The taina is that there's congestion, there's traffic on the way, there's blockages, and it doesn't work. So, in order to deal with this sugya properly, which is the Meitzar HaGoron, the Yitzias Mitzrayim in Aveda, we're going to have to understand behektem what is bichlal the relationship between meichin and midas. Why is it that the Eibusha set up in this way, that between meichin and midas there is this blockage? What's it there for? What's its purpose in a positive sense? Once we understand how it should be working ideally, we're going to have to understand where does it go wrong? And then we're going to have to start looking for solutions, ways to deal with the problem. And this is the structure of the Maimer B'Chlolos and the Tov Nun Hey, which we're going to be learning in the future weeks. But as a Hakdama, what we really have to deal with is Bichlal, the whole shit of the Alter Rebbe. In other words, who says that this is the best way? What does the Alter Rebbe want? Before we deal with the problems, first of all, we have to understand why have we gone down this path, bichlal, of using our meichin to give birth to midas, and once we understand what the advantages are, then we could properly deal with and properly be magdir what the problem is. So what we want to do today is Pashat as an introduction. What is the Alter Rebbe's approach? What's this vision that the Alter Rebbe has of Chassidus Chabad? We know that the Alter Rebbe spent many years, in fact, even before the Istalkos of the Magid, the Alter Rebbe began what was called the Derech of Chabad. This is a unique shitta within the Talmidei HaMagid, and this is, as we know, the smetana, the pnimius of what the whole Chassidus is about. It's like the Baditchev said that the Alter Rebbe, we all ate from one plate and the Alter Rebbe got the best. In other words, this was the kavana pnimis of the whole Teres HaBaal Shem Tov. So, first of all, Pashat, what's it about? Now, we don't need to look too far. In the Maimer that we learned this week, where the Alter Rebbe talks in the Maimer Lochein Emer in Teira'er, the Alter Rebbe spends a good chunk of the Maimer at the beginning describing the picture-perfect situation, what Take would look like when you have the Gili of Meichin, and it's going to come into Midas, as a description before beginning the problem. So we're going to be spending time on this today, understanding properly what is the ideal version of a Chassid Chabad before the problems begin. Now, before we get into the Peichena Inyan, just a few nekudas to be ma'erer machshav. In order to describe this Inyan of Meir Shalat Alalev and the Meichin being Meled the Midis that the Alter Rebbe says in so many other places, for example, Perek Gimel in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe uses an interesting language. It's about Simcha. Now the obvious question is, I understand obviously that if a person understands something and internalizes it, it will generate a simcha. Like everything which a person does and makes some satisfaction, so he's going to get simcha. But why is this the framework for what we're talking about? And if I'm not happy about it? And could I not get simcha any other way? Was hat das zu tun mit simcha? Let's say it even sharper. If the Alter Rebbe over here is describing the Aveda of Chassidus Chabad, Meichin being Meled Midis, and das is the Inyan from Simcha, as he says, Eima Bonim Smeicha, Simcha is from Meichin. L'cheire, the concept of Simcha exists without Chassidus Chabad. V'adarabba, if we would describe a Chassid, l'chure, a Chassid should without Chassidus Chabad, the way they were called, originally Chassidim were called the Freilacher. In other words, the concept of Simcha is bepashtus a makif tikeinu. It belongs in the same category as Amunah and Mesiras Nefesh and Avos Yisrael. In other words, Simcha is an inyan of makif. One could even argue that Chassid Chabad is in a way compromising his Simcha in order to get the pnimiyas, to be more honest, more of an emes aveda. What's the Alter Rebbe saying over here is that the Aveda of Meichin with Midas, this is Simcha. Eim abonim smeich. Bina is the Sibba for Simcha. All Simcha comes from his bonanus, and only when he's Meled the Midas, that's when you can have, when it's an Eim abonim, when there's actual bonim, then there's going to be Simcha. What lies over here? What's the nukud? Another nukuda, that when the Alter Rebbe is describing this tzir of the perfect Aveda, the Alter Rebbe talks about Ave b'tanugim. Now, there's many madregas in Ave, and in fact, later on in our Sugya, we're going to be seeing a few madregas. What's the Hagdar over here, Dafke in Ave b'tanugim? Ave b'tanugim is talking about a kesher atzmi with the Eibishter. We're talking about the mitzad the etzem nefesh. We've reached a level, a depth, which is far greater than the regular ifanim of Meichin being Meled Midas. So what is it that the Alter Rebbe wants to bring out over here as part of the Hakdama for the Maila of Meichin Bichlal? Another interesting point, even though the Alter Rebbe begins with Ave b'tanugim, somehow in the middle the Alter Rebbe says, but there's also Kiddush B'yesh. So it begins with Ave b'tanugim, but there's suddenly a nekuda of fire. Fragt sich the kashe, what's a shaykhis? As we know, generally speaking, there's Ave b'tanugim is a kesher atzmi that I can't be separated. And Ave Kiddush B'yesh is the taich is that there's a search, there's a yearning. I want to be where I'm not. So, have we shifted? Pashup Pshat in the Maimon. Are we talking about Tanugim or Ave Kiddush B'yesh? One final Nakuda, B'negeh the Simcha. There's L'cheira inconsistency over here, B'chlal, how the Simcha works. We says the Hagdara is Simcha is, the idea of Simcha is the union of his galus. Now, What's that mean by pashtus? So at the beginning of the Maimer, let's read the Lashon. He says that Tia Simchas HaNefesh be'izgalus rishpei eish ha'ava lotzeis min arteko hi Meitzar HaGuf. So what happens is that as a result of having the Gili of Meichin, and in the Midas, that's going to generate a Simcha. What's the mashal he brings for that later in the Maimer? That the Melech, when he is besimcha, then he has his galus. So there's a very simple question over here. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Does the Gili make simcha, or does the simcha make Gili? And the Maimer is constantly saying both. So once we understand properly what's the idea of Meichin and Midas, and what's the idea of Simcha, then we'll be able to come back to deal with also the Pratim, Pashat and Pshat in the Maimer. So what we'll do now is, Pashat, let's detach ourselves for a moment from the structure of the Maimer. And what we want to understand is, first of all, Bichlal, the Aveda, the Maila of Chabad. Once we're going to get clarity in that, we're going to have to move on. What's the shaykhis with Simcha? To understand Bichlal what's Simcha. And once we see the relationship between these two, Chabad and Simcha, then we're going to be able to come back and discuss why is this the unique Chabad approach? Umemele, how does the Meitzar HaGoron come in? What's the problem with the Meitzar HaGoron? Okay, so we're starting now from a clean slate. It's a new perek. Before we progress, does anyone have any questions, concerns, hardest? Okay. Bichlal, a person should, by definition, every being, before a person, every being, he is his midas. In other words, an animal, what is he? His experience. So that's why every animal, Take has a nesher is a rachmani and a erev is a achzari. This is who I am. Al derech zeh, even higher kind of beings, a malach. What is a malach? I experience myself, which is everyone has his ton. Now, it could be that in order for me to experience myself or to express myself, I'm also going to have to deal with some objective facts and truths around me. I'm going to have to, for survival, I'm going to have to be aware of the elements. For any kind of emotional experience, it's always going to be generated towards something I'm experiencing. So there's always a sviva over here. But what midas are and what I am is I, by definition. This is the world of midas. In other words, theoretically, if a table would be able to experience what he would experience is midas, he experiences being. That's who I am. A human, the Eibishter made something unique. He took this person, or this thing, which in Yonah is himself, which l'chura there should be some kind of ceiling, that I can't go higher than that, because this is who I am. And the Eibishter opened a window in this ceiling, and said that a person is not limited to being himself. A person could be aware of, first of all, things which are bichlal not him. He could also have the capacity to agree with things which are bichlal not l'tevase. It could be that my biased opinion would be this, but I have to admit that the truth, logic prevails, that this is the truth. Now, there's only a Adam has this, and this is bepashto something unique which the Eibishter took in a person and broke the gdarim of yeshes, of myself. The pashtus, this is the lashon that we say in davening, atocheinen la'adam das. The Eibishter gives a matana to a person. Midas are not a matana. Midas are who I am. This is I. Meichin is, despite me being me, I've been given the capacity to be not me, to experience the truth. Therefore, bepashtus, not only could I be aware of it, the way I experience midas and the way I experience meichin are very different. If you stop a person, you ask him when he's learning, what are you thinking about? So the answer is he's thinking about the pshat in the Gemara, or he's thinking about some kind of mathematical equation. So he has left himself and connected to something else. Masha'enkin midas, when a person is experiencing any midah, whether it's fear or love or depression, it's what I'm experiencing is myself. I can't say I'm detached from myself, because if not, then it's not an emotion. Kumto sai, what the chiddush of seichel is, sai that I've introduced me to become aware of something, but not just I could become aware of something, I could have the capacity for an hour or longer to totally detach myself and become connected to something. Nochmer, the keich of seichel is not just to know the truth and to experience the truth, but the keich of seichel could be that I could dedicate myself to the truth, which is what we say that a person, ruach adam hiya ila lamayla, a human has the keich to become idealistic, to care about the emes, and the emes should become my inyan. On the cheshbon of me. This is the unique capacity of seichel, of meichin. Therefore, not only does meichin have this kaya of knowing the truth and experiencing the truth and connecting to the truth, but because meichin is now, when he's in the driver's seat, the meichin is being applied, the whole person becomes connected and ibergegam. So therefore, a person was liegt in muskalis is a hechere mensch. He's a maruma. He's the reibene mensch, because he's connected to something other. Obepashos, on a very technical level, a person who learns something, so he knows today what he doesn't know yesterday. He's grown. Masha'enkin, a person who has ave, there's no growth. I'm experiencing myself again and again. Therefore, for very technically, it's boring to learn again what I learned yesterday, because the whole idea of seichel is to reach outside of me to learn something new. It's a tenua of bittul. I want to know something that I don't know. I'm a mekabel. Masha'enke in midas, for me to experience the same simcha I had yesterday, if I sing a niggin yesterday, so today I could sing it again. It's a good experience. I'm happy to experience it again and again. So I could have the ava to the same person, nachamal or nachamal. The ava itself may be dynamic, but the musig of ava, it's not about going somewhere new. It's adar, it's more expression of me. So I'm sitting in the same space. This is the nekudas achiluk between meichin and midas, or the balosh and achsidus. Meichin is bittul and midas is yeshes. Let's say the Hagdara a bit sharper. Meichin is being a makabel. In other words, that there's a gilui of a elyon. Masha'enkin midas is not being a makabel. So the concept of meichin is, who is he? He is a makabel. Therefore, here in the vart of makabel, I have over here two sides. The makabel is bebittel, and the mashpia, the elyon, is beis galus. This is the relationship of meichin to the truth. So we'll find various lashonos always about meichin. Sometimes it says that it is galus, or is pashtus, gili eir. Sometimes it says that meichin is bittel. The answer is pashut. Are you talking about the eir, or are you talking about the keli? Are you talking about me being my bittel, or are you talking about how much the truth is beis pashtus or beis galus? This is the Nakuda of Meichin. Now, just to Bavarin, there's obviously a Pashut question which many ask when we reach this Hakdara, that Meichin is connecting to the truth. If so, how is it that you could have an argument in Seichel? In Midas, it's obvious. You know, we don't argue about what's my taste or my heritage. I love him, you love him. So that makes sense. But Meichin is about the truth. So how could you have a machlekes b'shamay b'shilul? What's the dance? Say bazei lecheire. It's not bittul. Other the lashon is always that the reason b'shamay and b'shilul think in different efanim because he comes from chesed, he comes from gevur. So lecheire, within learning, there's always going to be it's soft an expression of my own teva. So the answer is, in short, and this is a longer discussion. If somebody wants to see inside, there's a Maimer in Eter. If you see Amud Kuf Nun in the new print in Eter, and there's also once the Rebbe spoke about it once Tafshin Memhei, the winter Memhei. If anyone is looking, would want to know, I could find the Maramakim. When we say Meichin is looking for the truth, we don't mean to say, obviously, that there's no I over here. What we mean to say is one thing. I've looked for the truth. This is the truth to the best of my ability, as much as I've understood it. We're not finding that every svara that I experience is the truth. We're talking over here about the Tnuah of Meichin is the search for the truth. And that's the Chiddush of Seichel. Obviously, it's going to be mugbal to my kelim. In other words, let's say it's in Pasha Tevet. The svara itself may be krum, may not be a true svara. And that doesn't negate the fact that Meichin is bittul. So if a person, let's say, if we decide that communism is not true, it's false, it's a wrong idea. But if you have a person who had learned it and understood it and dedicated his life to it, it is a bittul dikemensch. He's a person who has ruach adam yeh. He's connected to the emes, and the emes has overtaken him. Happens to be that it's a false emes. It's a misunderstanding. So what? That's not the. We're not saying over here the svara is emes. We're saying the tnuah of seichel is a search for emes, and that's the ma'ila of meichin. That is a keli for bittul for the emes outside of himself. Now, here comes the Kiddush of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe said, let's take this unique tchuna of Meichin and harness it for Avei. Nicht nor is this unique tchuna of value in itself. But the Alter Rebbe says, let's put him in the driver's seat. Let's make the whole person run al pi Meichin. Why? We know the Baal Shem Tov is Megal Adinyan of Emun. It's not Neshama. The Rebbe said, let's take this Emunah, and it shouldn't remain mitzad etzem hanefesh, be'efen makif. Let's bring it into the person. How could you access the full tzir kaima of the person? Try bring Emunah into midas, it's not going to work. Mimanavshach. Midas, by definition, are I wallow in my own yeshes. This is who I am. I can't climb out of myself. So either I have it be'etzem, or I don't. How could I connect with the emes? How could I connect with the emunah? Zog the Alter Rebbe, the bridge is Meichin. Meichin has a capacity of accepting the truth, kameshahu, and you could experience in your Meichin the full emes. That's the bittul of Meichin. Nishnor could you experience it, but because Meich Shalat Alalev, the Meich is going to now be mechanech the whole tzir kema of the person, including his midas and including his ma'aseh, should all be in a bittul dikreif. So what we're going to have over here is that First of all, I'm going to leave my yeshes. I'm going to hear that there's truth. This is the emes. Aber nicht nur das, my yeshes itself will be permeated with that. Because and the Meich is going to tell the Lev, this is the truth that you should experience. So that we're going to harness the full midas. And I'll come over also in the Meitzar. Meich shalat ala Lev, so therefore, bepashas begashmias, you will do according to what's right. You will act idealistically. This is the Kiddush of the Alter Rebbe. Let's use the Meich, the Keich of Chabad. So, come over. This is an important Bavarinish. When the Alter Rebbe established Chassidus Chabad, so there shouldn't be a misunderstanding that the Alter Rebbe is saying Meichen is more important than this. The Alter Rebbe is not saying we're going to work on Chabad. Chassidus Chabad means Chabad is the key. Of course we want to reach the midas, but the only way to have bittul the midas is if it's going to be al pi ha-meichen. And this is a yesod which Mistama we're going to be dealing with later on in the Sugya and elsewhere. The pashtus that Meichen has the kayach. First of all, naturally Meichen makes a bittul in midas. As you see, children, their midas are very strong and akshanazdik. Masha'en Kain, Meichen comes and makes the midas settled and makes the midas nuanced, because Meichen comes and brings in a hechera samach bittul in the midas. And the Alter Rebbe explains that be'emes, this is bichlal, the battle of kedusha against klipa. That klipa comes from the shviras hakelim of Teyu, which was in the midas. There was missing Meichen over there. The yeshes always comes from midas. The Meichen is bittul. This is the big picture. Always the Alter Rebbe is contrasting how much the Meichen is going to overpower and the midas to bring the truth, the full aid into the yeshus of the person. Now, Bazeh Guf. There's various madregas. The more bitteldik the Meichen will be, the higher the air he will be able to reach. Omemela, that is Gufa is going to overtake the midas. So if a person has a hisbonus in an air which is shayches to our world, obviously, so that's by definition gives legitimacy and space to my mitzias. So it's not going to be being mevatel mayesha so much. Masha'en Kain, if there's going to be a real seichel, that says in ganzen bidveikos, in ganzen übergenommen by the truth, and it's such a truth which doesn't give space for me at all. Dahainu, the etzem of the Eibishter, where mitzad that madrege, there's no mocking for nivraim, because seichel has the capacity to even do that. What's that going to do to the midas? It's going to entirely take over the midas till they lose the whole yeshes, and the person will become what we call ave betanugim. It's the ave where it's not ave. There's an expression of I, where there's me and my love for the thing. I become zugeklappt to the thing. I become totally as the experience of tainug, as pleasure is, that it's the lashon is there's no rash. He's not murgish. There's no I over here. I'm totally taken by the emes. That's ave betanug, and that's why it's calm. That's why that's why it remains, because there's no struggle over here. I've totally overtaken the yeshes. This is the pashtus, and our Maimah, why the Alter Rebbe is bringing the Ava B'Tanugim, because this is what's called in Chassidus the Ava of Meichen. Kumuvan, all Avas have to have Meichen, but usually it's an Ava of Meichen. Then he talks the language of Lev. What happens when the Meichen itself talks? In other words, the truth itself is overtaking the person. Kumtois that the midas are now going to have to work on the level of the Meichen. That's going to create the Ava B'Tanugim in ganzen zugeklept. I don't know how to translate zugeklept. There's probably a better word for it in English. And I'm Bichlal now here. This is only the emes kameshu. Okay. Adkan is in Pashat Verter a short sikkum of the Maila of Chabad. Rabbi Schneer is asking, what about Midas Tivim? So Kumuvan, there are Midas Tivim, but Midas Tivim are Yeshestiv. You have a person does have Midas Tivim, but if they haven't been mechunech from Meichin, then it's all an expression of I. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Rabbi Schneer. Maybe if you want to speak up.
Yeah, sorry. You were just explaining how if you have a deeper or higher level of seichel attachment in Elikos, so that makes the midas completely buckle.
Yeah.
But l'chora, the midas tivim are sort of the fuel, or deeper in the nefesh of the person behind the seichel. For example, Beisham and Bishil, they're noited towards chesed, towards gura. So the highest sort of attachment of seichel, does that also impact the midas tivium of the person, the way he is sort of created?
Okay, so the emphasis is it's a bit as I think a sugya. When there's I think we connected two things over here. There's when we say that the sheirish of Bisham and Bisilul is from Chesed or Gvura, that we're saying over here there is the sheirish from Seichel. It's within Seichel. We're saying that they have the way their mind works. It's the Teva Seichel. We're not saying Chas v'Shalom that Bisham and Bisilul came from an emotional state. They were entirely being academic when they were learning. The way that Meichin is designed is b'shar shebechesed gvura datzitz. That's a pashat ein vart. Benegeya the midas tivim. So the pashtus is that ava b'tanugim machdiber the midas tivim. Knows we the lashon is l'shanis tavim midaysev and midaysev ativim. So ava b'tanugim is going to, and that's where the Alter Rebbe describes in Perek Tes in Tanya, the ava b'tanugim really takes the tainug of the nefesh b'hamis and takes over. So there is no other yeshestik midas when I'm experiencing ava b'tanugim. This is in short, hopefully settling this issue. Okay, we could continue this afterwards if you want. Now, that was all benegeya, the yachas of Meichin to midas. This is the Alter Rebbe's picture of Chabad. How does simcha come? What's simcha? I mean, in the language over here, the Meimer says, it's all interwoven. The simcha and the Meichin and the ikra is galus of simcha is through Meichin, and Meichin comes from simcha, and simcha comes from Meichin. So let's leave for a second the Meichin and midas, and let's zoom in on the idea of simcha. And what we're going to try and demonstrate is how the concept of simcha and the concept of Meichin are really mamish hainuch. Okay. What is the experience of simcha? So we know that Bechlal in Chassidus we connect simcha to bittul. Yisva novim ba'avaya simcha. Very technically, the more a person is bittul, so the less he assumes he deserves, so the more he'll appreciate what he has. So Eju Asher Asamech Bechalke, the pashtus. So simcha comes from anov. But the truth is that the relationship between bittul and simcha is far deeper. The simcha experience is an experience of bittul. Was heißt? Bepashtus. Ask a person who's ba'atzvus, what are you thinking about? The answer will be, he's thinking about himself. He's engrossed in himself, involved, and he's self-absorbed. Self-pity, whatever atzvus looks like. Masha'enkin, if you're going to ask a person who's besimcha, what are you thinking about? The answer will always be something great that has just transpired. The chasana, winning the lottery, whatever it is, there's something big happening over here, and I have lost myself in this moment. I'm feeling myself less.
That's something?
Yeah.
But l'chora ba'atz was also it's from something. Meaning, if you're saying only things that are totally disconnected from him is one thing, but if you're saying things that are connected to him, so Atzvus is because I don't know, he lost the lottery, not he lost the lottery, but whatever it is, he lost, something wrong happened. Like what?
Okay, very good, very good. Let's deal with it. Very good, very good. So let's just take this a step further, and then we're going to come back to what you're pointing out. Let's talk about the experience of simcha. The metzius is that it's not just that over here there's an idea, and over here I'm thinking about myself, and over here I'm thinking about something else. Maybe pashtus and atzvus, I'm thinking, like you say, I lost money, so it's me. Mashenkin and simcha, there's something great. The experience of simcha is that I feel myself less. The pashtus. A person is built from nefesh and guf. The more atzvus, the more the guf is felt. That's why the Alter Rebbe uses the lashon for atzvus is kavtus. He feels weight. The pashtus. He schleps himself. It's hard for him to walk. He's bent over, which is literally pashat. He's weighed down, and even his facial expression. Yeah, I mean his mouth is drooping. That's atzvus. The person is heavy. Masha'en came when there's simcha. A person is light. He's light-footed. He walks with a straight back. As der Heben. What's this tenua of der Hebenkeit in simcha? The guf's lost weight. The answer is because the guf became bottled to the nefesh, and the nefesh has overpowered the guf to the point that there's more energy. So much so, if simcha has expressed itself on a broader scale, the person becomes so light that he lifts himself off the ground, and that's the taich dancing. What does it mean to dance? If you take a person who's ba'atzvus and you pay him money to dance, he's not going to be able to. He picks up one foot and he puts it down, but there's no lightness, there's no derhebenkeit. Masha'enkin simcha, I have to control myself from dancing, because what happens is that the nefesh is behis galus. So the tenua of simcha is that the nefesh is behis galus and the guf is in a tenua of makam. Therefore, also in effect to my sviva, because atzvus is self-absorbed, and the experience is going to be I become more sensitive. Because it's all about me. Masha'enkin in simcha, it happens just the opposite. Bizmana simcha, I could dance with my worst enemy. Why? Because it's not nechshev. Ich lieg nicht in sich now. What's happening is I've broken these boundaries. The nefesh is behis galus, and the guf and the yeshes is bottled to the eir. So lesikum, the sibah of simcha is because the eir is being meir, and the experience of simcha is that the eir nefesh is meir and the guf is bottled. Now, here comes what I think you are asking. You're comparing atzvus. You're saying atzvus also has a sibah. And simcha also has a sibah. In other words, you could let's say, I think your question is a little bit different. Simcha also, what do you mean a sibah? But the sibah is yeshes. If I won the lottery, so when a person wins the lottery, he's very happy with himself. If you win the lottery, I'm not happy. Maybe I'll be ba'atzvus. How does simcha is bittul? Why are we saying that simcha is not self-absorbed? So here we have to say a sharper Hakdama. Simcha, when we mean simcha is bittul, yisva anovim b'Hashem simcha, we mean to say one thing, that simcha is in a tenua of being mekabel. Ich bin mekabel azach was is be'enarek. There's a great which has overwhelmed me, and I'm in a tenua of mekabel, so therefore I feel myself less. Let's ask the question differently. L'chayra, we see that a person, when when he works hard and he gains something, then for him, it's very precious. He's also besimcha. Why are we saying that simcha is dafka when he nochal lo'hoin yakar always, that he wins the lottery? So what's the answer? That there's two b'darim. There's simcha and there's time. Simcha is being overwhelmed by something greater than me. A gili of a emes, and I'm bottled to it. Tainug is faket, that I'm connected. Bichlal simcha and tainug are very different. The nutnu of tainug is I've connected to it, and it's become mine. Therefore, grada happens to be that with tainug it will be more precious. If I've worked for something, then it's Meitzar Yodov, and it's kavdi lei, and it will remain his, and he's connected. Simcha, if somebody wins the lottery, he could very easily lose the money. He could splurge. Why? Because he hasn't worked hard. But the simcha is going to be great, because simcha is a tnu of breaking a boundary. There's a gili. Now, al derech zeh, let's come back to the way it works in nefesh. It's just like we say that simcha is because there's a truth which is overwhelmed and I'm makabel from it. And in the nefesh ha'adam, it's the guf is being bottled to the nefesh. Or there's something great which is overwhelmed. That's the tnuah of simcha, the bittel, the arozgen von sich. That tnuah is also within the nefesh itself. We know that when the nefesh, the pnimius ha-nefesh is nizgale, the keiches ha-nefesh become bottled. And they could change form. As we see by Pashtus in Simcha, is that a person has his limitations, the way his midas work. Let's say a person who is a very stingy person, or a shy person, who's afraid of public speaking. Bizman ha-simcha, so the pshitas ha-nefesh, the pnimius ha-nefesh bursts forth, and the keiches ha-nefesh are makabel. And suddenly it says not only are the midas could they change, but even the meichin pashut, a person who has a simple mind, but when it's his galus of the nefesh, he grows in his IQ. He could understand more. What's happened over here? What happened is that the pnimius ha-nefesh burst forth, and the kelim of the nefesh are makabel more than they expect regular. So the tnu of simcha is that there's a galus of the elyon, and the kelim are makabel on every level. This is bepashtus, on a very simple level. What's tzchik? What's actually someone's laughing? What's laughing is that there's always, the sibba for the joke is that there's something unexpected. There's a surprise in every joke. There's that nukuda, the element of surprise. And what it does to me is, I burst out laughing. In other words, there's something, b'pnimius ha-nefesh, which bursts forth. It's been amakabel. It's more than I could take. Good. Nachzer l'inyanim. So to summarize, the tnu of simcha is, and as it stated in the Ma'amarim, is as it is a makabel. Now, let's just deal with one of the nukudas that we touched on before. When you have simcha, there's going to be two things. Because the tnu is a tnu of gilu, so the elyon is being nizgala. That makes simcha. But the simcha itself is, the gili itself is also generated from simcha. In other words, b'pashtus. You have a Talmud who's bottled. Because he's bottled to the Rav, so he could understand what the Rav is saying. But because the Rav was megalatim and knew Eira Seichel, he becomes even more bottled. So therefore, he has a keli, he's keches for even more gili. So it's a vicious cycle, or not vicious. It's a good cycle. The cycle. The way it works is that the more bittul, the more gili, and the more gili, the more bittul. Umemela, that's the type growth. So we asked the question over here: how does simcha work? We say simcha is beis galos, but how does it start? Usually the taich is that because I'm a simcha, therefore I'm beis galos. That was the muscle of the Melech. He comes out. So therefore, how's it going to work within me? I'm going to be mekabel this gil. Aber hagufa will arouse in me a simcha. If it's more of a simcha, it's more bittul. Therefore, there's makim for more gili. Now, let's come back to the musig of Meichin of Chabad of the derech of the Alter Rebbe. What the Alter Rebbe wants is that a Yid should be able to connect with the etzem of the Eibishter Kamesho. You could connect in the Eifon of Emun. But the Alter Rebbe doch wants that I should come by from Pnimi. What's the etzem? How could a person have within his Meichin and within his midas, within the confines of who he is, the full emes? So we say proper Meichin is dependent on Simcha. Not only is it dependent on Simcha, it is Simcha. Eim habanim Simcha. This is the Hakdama for Meichin. What's Meichin? To be a Mekabel. To hear the truth. What's Simcha? To be a Mekabel. If we would be talking about being Mekabel, something which is Lefi Erech Mi, I wouldn't need for that Simcha. For that, all I have to do is use my brain and understand what's going on. But because I want to be Mekabel as a emesazach, which is Lefi Erki, in the language of our Maimer, I want to be Mekabel higher than Mirev Koil. I want to be Mekabel, the Simcha in the Eibishter himself. For that, you need Simcha. That's the type of Simcha. Therefore, the Aveda of Simcha is the Aveda of Chabad. It's the same thing. So we could talk about Simcha as a separate idea. Kommen Chassidim zusammen und man geht tanzen. Aber in this context over here, what the Alter Rebbe is saying is no. Simcha, the real inyan of Simcha, the Hainu, that the Simcha played it together, that's breaking all the Gedarim of the Nefesh, which is the real Gedarim over here. So it's Mishkan Chachma to break the Gedarim and to speak with the enemy, or to make a Suta Sanim, to invite a lot of guests, all the different tchunas we say in Simcha, where it breaks my Gedarim. The real breaking the Gedarim is my own Gedarim. That Shini which is happening through Meichin. Because Meichin and Simcha are Hainuach. Therefore, the only way this could work is that a person has to be besimcha and learn. Therefore, the lashon is b'chein dvar halacha. A person can't learn without simcha. But the learning itself generates simcha. When a person masa tisef techadete, it's tzavu panav. Then he's going to be able to grow. This is, in short, the Nekuda, the way the Alter Rebbe is presenting the ideal version of the Chabad Chassid, of a Yid. How we could connect with the Eibishter Beif and Pnimi, the Meichin and the Midas. The Meichin is bitteldik, it's reaching into the Yeshus of Midas and is changing it. And this is mamish the idea of Simcha, which is bittel, and therefore the Tachten gets elevated. Now, there was one Nekuda which just want to sharpen is the kasha. If it's Ava B'Tanugim, why does he mention Kerish Beyesh? So it says, this is a Tzedor HaMaimer in Tovshin Hei. Zayim Tovshin Hei. It's a part of the Hemshech L'Shana Tovshin Hei, where he describes over there the concept of Ava B'Tanugim. He says that also in Ava B'Tanugim there is a inyan of Ratz. Posest. Usually, when we're talking in the lower madregas of Ava, so the Ratzi is coming from the Yeshus. So, what does Ratzi mean? I want. In a Tnua of Meichin, where the full emes has overtaken me, so it's Ava B'Tanugim, because it's an even as is Yismach Yisrael B'Esav. The only thing that's happening over here is Esav is the Eibishter. So there's no space for me. What's the touch I want? So Zok the Friedrich Rebbe and the Santa Adar. When the truth is meir, you want not because you want, but because the truth is pulling. It's not Yeshus. It's that the truth is pulling you to this place. So just like when a person is having pleasure, So what's happening over here is he's getting pulled into it. So I could say, was heißt you feel sich you're pulling, you're pushing? Who do you think you are? Am I murgish over here? The only thing which should be murgish in a world of seichel, in a world of simcha, is the emes alein. But the emes demands this. So it's the rotzui mitzad hamoir. That's the lashon. It's mitzad emes is being pulling me in. Therefore, I'm losing myself. So sometimes you have, and this is the taich in our maimer, you're going to have a kerish pei'esh as a prat in ava b'tanugim. This is the picture perfect of the Chassid Chabad. We're going to be able to understand the big tzara of the Meitzar HaGoron. If I have a blockage, then what we've done is the Chassid is bankrupt. The whole plan is that the emes should be made. And the emes is made in making. And making is taka keli for emes. And aim abonim smecha. That's the aim. That's the making. The result of it is that there's no bonim. So we're back to square one. The whole matara was to overtake the yeshus through the making. Matara of Chabad wasn't Chabad. The matara was to change the midas. If there is no Asher so why have we get? So the truth is, we have to be honest. He says there is a musig of simcha in making itself. Come on. Because we've permeated the world of seichel. It came from a world of emunah, of truth, and we were paid it together. But the real inyan agili is ispashtus. And where's the ispashtus going to be murgish is ba'alev. Therefore, we're not going to have simcha. Das ist der musik von simcha. It's interesting to be made that in Perek Lamed Gimel, when Alter Rebbe describes the simcha in Achdas Hashem, over there also there's two lashonos. There's the Alter Rebbe says that a person, the way the Perek starts is he is sameach with the Achdas Hashem, but then the simcha is more than that. He's sameach that he was Yiddish. So there could be, in other words, there's the two tzadim in simcha that I was saying before. First of all, there's the simcha which creates, he's happy with the emes. That's l'chatchila. But then that gufa generates a simcha within me, which is the teitzah, that the side the simcha maybe the day is galus, and his galus maybe the day is simcha. And that's the cycle, and that should overtake me. However, if a person doesn't have it, it's felt in the Indian from midas. So we don't have the idea which we wanted to do with making a person connected with Eibishter. Therefore, Heipt on the Alter Rebbe, with understanding properly the Meitzar HaGoron, why does it exist? What are the various solutions for it, v'chulu, which we're going to be seeing in the next few weeks. Just want to be Messiah with just an interesting nakudah. We've been saying the whole time that the way simcha works is that first there's isgalus, because there's isgalus, there's simcha, and because there's simcha, there's isgalus. So sof, the question is, how do we start? When's it all begin? So it's very interesting. In this week's Torah is Parshas Tetzaveh, says this is the Aveda of Aaron Kohen Gadol, that he's Shoshvinin. What's the job of the Aaron Kohen Gadol? Is that because we want to bring in the union of Eirav Simcha in the person, Eirav Simcha, we're talking the Purim Sprach, is how do we bring in this Eirav Simcha? So it has to start with Aaron, who is Madlikas Aneris, he ignites Neshamas Yisrael, and he brings them the Simcha. Also in the famous Maimer in Seis Tosis, in Tazriya, and Lukutei Teira, over there, again, it goes through Mamish the same as bonus. It's very similar to the Maimer in Tetzaveh and to the Maimer we're learning L'Chainem. That there's a biur of understanding the etzem of the Eibishter, the way the Eibishter is Miroiv Koel, higher than all the Madrigas and Seder Shtalshalos, and that brings Simcha. But also over there, there's a musig of Yisrus de La'ela, that it comes Milamai. which in the Sprach of Chassidim, obviously, who's the Aaron Kein Gadol, where the Simcha begins, Sedah Ein Kein Gadol, yeah? In other words, there's the Chasam B'Chisam Shel Kein Gadol, there's the Chassidus, there's what the Rebbe does. So obviously, all of Aveda is going to be dependent. First of all, there's this his Eredus Melamayl, which is the Hebt Tzachon Kein Gadol, which was Hebt Ufayit. That's a Simcha. Then there's going to be the Aveda. Oh, there's a Gili. Let me accept this Gili. In simple words, the Rebbe says Chassidus. If a Yid himself would sit in a room and try to think about the Eibishter, so there's no Gili over here, so there's nothing to be bottled to, so there's an Ein Chavash Materes Atzma. As much as Seichel as the Keich to be Mekabel, he has to be Mekabel from a Mashpia. So first of all, there has to be Mekum Tzum Rebbe. And then there's the Seiris Malamayim. And that's this way, in this Maimon it doesn't say it, but it's a Geshmaka Hashlom. This is the Aveda of the Aaron Kein Gadol, the Matranise, was Heptuf. Then there's a Hisbananus, and the more you learn Chassidus, the more it becomes a chelik for me. So Bikuda Avai Yisharim is Masam Chelek, Sanem Tiber bis Masamech Salev, and this is the way a Chassid becomes Beifin Pnimi Iber genommen with what Chassidus will say. Yeah, and just finally in one word, Kamuven, Meshtet Haint Erev Purim Cotton, like the Rebbe always says, always brought the Ramah as Tevelev Mishnah Tamid, the Nekuda of Purim Cotton is the Nekuda of Simche. So says Alt Bashgacha Pratis is that we're learning this in. Yeah. Okay, Mendel, I don't know, did we deal with the, oh, we just lost him. Shlomi, is there any gili that could come from feeling sad? I think Mendel Shmotkin has also wrote a similar question. There's two things over here. There's the gilui and there's the hergish that's happening in me. Obviously, the feeling of a tzveiter, experiencing what he's experiencing, that comes from Meichin, that comes from Bittul. And that is Kumuven, a good thing. The sadness makes a kibbutz. The sadness makes a atzvus. That is kavdus. And that is, in other words, the pshat in feeling in Yanim's tzara is that his metzias has touched my yeshes, but it's a yeshestik experience. In fact, by Chassidim vielleicht man sagen that I think Remendel used to say this a lot, that it's much easier to feel sad for somebody else than to be samech with somebody else's sin. With this whole conversation, it comes out very clear because sof feeling sad is a tnu of yeshes. Masha'en came. Moshe Or says a good word over here. There's the empathy and there's the sadness. So the empathy is obviously coming from Bittul. It's feeling him, putting myself in someone else's shoes. But the sadness, that's just feeling myself. Feeling down is feeling myself. There's no two ways about it. Masha'en came to sein zufrieden, the simcha for him, then I have to leave myself and it's all about him. That is a much deeper aveda, the aveda of sein samech, the simcha of Achav.
Das Gefühl für das Zweite.
A Gefühl für das Zweite. So the Gefühl für das Zweite is the empathy. Ich feel you, right? So feeling somebody else is very different to sad. The sadness is Arogefallenkeit. That's atzvus. In other words, let's say it very different. If a person who is ba'atzvus, it's impossible for him to feel someone else, right? Because he's so totally absorbed. When a person is besimcha, he could feel someone else more. Kumtais, in Pashat Verter, the empathy has to do with simcha, not to do with sadness, not to do with atzvus. It's more a result of simcha. It may bring to a sadness. That's a separate thing. But the empathy itself, the feeling, mit feeling yenen, that's a tnu of simcha. That's a tnu von Aresgin von sich.
I'm saying more specifically in how to be Megala within yourself, like you said before, that the Simcha is able to be Megala Pnimius. Is there anything that a feeling of sadness could bring out from you that you wouldn't be able to have without it?
No, I don't think so. I think if the feeling of sadness closes up a person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're saying that you could write a song from a place of sadness.
That for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, doesn't the Alter Rebbe say, from Mariras are coming up, that from that you can have Yisaron? So if you didn't have sadness, you wouldn't be able to really know what happiness would be, the opposite. There's a whole lot of things that we can relate to because there's an opposite. So if you realize it's sad side, there's another side to that coin. It's happy while you're feeling sad.
True. We didn't get into this. There's a concept obviously called Mariras, which in our Maimer is an important theme. It's a Tnai, it's a Hakdama. It's not the Torah, right? It says there's the Mariras and then there's the Torah. In Mitzvah, we're going to come back to this when we talk about dealing with the Meitzar HaGoron. So Shlomo, we owe you one about how sadness could be a vehicle for Gil. So the short answer is no. Sadness does not make Gil. But sadness could be a good Hakdama for Inyan HaGil. And like it always says, that the Yisra Na'ir Mitei Chacheshech. Yeah, the Meitzar, which comes as a result of Meriris, is Simcha. So the Gili is Simcha. The writing of the song is a Tnuah of Gili. Why is it that there's a Meriris is a Hakdama? Why is sadness a Hakdama for Simcha? Good, that's an important conversation, which is taka in this Maimer, and later when we get to the solutions of dealing with the Meitzar HaGoron, that's going to be one of the building blocks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Is the Meitzar HaGoron like something logical for in general in developing Midas, or it's in regards to the Eibusher, in regards to Avos Hashem? Or is it in general? Midas towards anybody or anything?
L'chor, it's towards anything, but it's more brought out in the issue of Avos Hashem, because the more I need them to use Meichin, the more I need to come to the truth. So I'm going to need more Meichin. So then the Meitzar HaGoron is a bigger issue, because many of the midas that I feel are lachatchila midas dike experiences. I don't need the Meichin for them so much. Maybe I need the Meichin to help me be megala. Like there's the fact that I like ice cream. It doesn't come from Meichin. Technically, if I wouldn't have the Meichin to know about it, I wouldn't have this av. But it's lachatchila bahami is dike thing. It's a midas dike thing. So over here, there's no issue of Meitzar HaGoron. Sachakil, what the Meichin is doing is a Gilei HaHela. In when it comes to Avos Hashem, which be a Soide is in bittul, because it's all about him, not about me. That's when it's all based off the Meichin. Then it's going to be Meichin Dike Midas. That's when the Meitzar HaGoron comes in. So the more it's a Meichin Dike Midah, the more the Meitzar HaGoron is an issue. Yeah. Okay. Wow, we're going over time.
In the following weeks we continue 11:30 or continue 1.
Yeah, the time has been moved to 11:30. Hopefully this is Lefi Ratzon Reiva Tzibur. There's obviously everybody has different preferences, but if anyone has any specific times when it could work better for him, Bichlal, then maybe just to add it to the seker which was sent out. And we're trying to gauge the tzibur and trying to, as much as possible, supply the best.